plan, adjusting and moving through I would say nothing unusual for most commercial agents, going through the ups and downs, the changes in the market cycle. But I know Jeff Finn is no stranger to any of this market cycle. So Jeff, if you don't mind, kind of introduce yourself and then how you have crossed paths with Melody and everything. And I would just say, this is a great way for everyone else to use this time to network too. But Jeff, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about your background and who you are.
Appreciate that, Jim, and thanks for the opportunity once again to be on the Top Agent Nation session. As I've met so many of you in the past, it's hard to introduce, but I see a couple of friendly faces and familiar faces in the crowd. Nelson, Dave, and have backgrounds with me in RealNext and my company. We provide a great technology solution to the commercial real estate industry. But prior to that, I was the CEO at NAI Global and helped to build and grow that organization into a dominant force in the networking space or in the space for commercial real estate services around the world. So uh, left when we transitioned away from NAI, formed RealNext, which is a complete end-to-end solution for commercial real estate services, and found that with the technology and in my the background with NAI, that times like this are times that more than ever you need both great tools and great support to compete and stay at the top of your game. So I wanted to connect with Melody for this session as Melody and her partner Blaine Strickland have developed a incredible coaching service and solution, which we've employed at RealNext and have used for a number of our clients who have gone through their what we call a boot camp session, which we've combined the best practices in business development, prospecting, market mapping, becoming the master of your market and the authority of your market, as well as systematizing and really developing a process-driven approach to commercial real estate with our technology solutions to not just talk about what to do, but actually how you do it. So putting both of those things together for the commercial real estate industry. And yeah, we know there's a lot of very successful and experienced professionals on the call today, but I would say that everybody in the commercial real estate industry, as well as you do, or as challenged as you might be during a cycle, need a coach. And you think about it, and often the commercial real estate professionals think we can just do it. But when you think of Michael Jordan needed a coach, and Wayne Gretzky needed a coach, and anybody in any sport competing at the top of the market, and those that want to win and be most successful, benefit from having someone on the outside looking at them, seeing what they do, and helping them do it even better. So we've been thrilled with the work that we've done together with Melody and her process and the tools and sort of library of tools that they have, as well as the the one-on-one service that they can provide or the team-based service that they can provide to help the agents that we've worked with together be as successful as possible. So, Melody, I'll turn it over to you to uh, talk about what One More Deal is and how the One More Deal platform can help the agents on the call reach their potential.
Okay, well, thank you. Thanks, James, for inviting me, and thank you, Jeff, for the nice introduction. My name is Melody Montgomery. I work for an organization called One More Deal, and we specialize in coaching just in commercial real estate. So I consider this little box that I'm on right now, my Zoom screen, is, from my perspective, the commercial real estate confessional. And here's what happens. People, if I set up a meeting with them, they say, hold on, let me go out to my car. And they get in their car, they're like, I don't want anyone to hear this. I actually don't know what I'm doing. I'm having success, but I don't have a plan. I'm working crazy hours and I just keep extending my hours and I feel like I'm not in control of my territory and my pipeline isn't where I want it to be. This is a common issue of when the market's good, if you're showing up, if enough passes by your radar screen that you can grab and take to closing, you can do okay. But if you want something repeatable and consistent, anyone who's James Clear wrote a book called Atomic Habits. anyone who's an Atomic Habits reader knows James talks about you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And so what we talk about at One More Deal is um, it's not complicated. You just need to have a plan and a system for how you're going to execute it with some kind of accountability for doing it. So, my partner Blaine Strickland, if any of you have ever taken a CCIM class, he might have been your instructor. So Blaine's been a 40-year commercial real estate guy, and he's done all the different roles there are in commercial real estate. He's been a broker, a syndicator, a developer, a CCIM instructor, and for the last 15 years, he's been a commercial real estate coach. And so when you coach in commercial real estate, you see a surprising number of patterns of where people get stuck. And early on in their career, what's common is, well, I came on board and I'm trying to figure out the market and I'm trying to figure out how I differentiate myself. If I'm calling people, how am I not a commodity like every other broker? So, kind of figuring out, I need a prospecting plan. I need to define my market. I need a tool so I can track my activity. So we spend a lot of time talking to people who are kind of putting a basic plan together. Once we help them put a plan together, uh, they kind of go off and do their thing, and then several years later they say, "Hey, you helped me put together this plan of targeting my market, and I've been consistent on it. And the problem is now I'm drowning. Like I've got more work than I can handle, and I'm doing everything. And if you don't have an admin, then you're the admin. And so I'm thinking about putting a team together, and I'm not sure what to do." So about a third of the work we do is let's think about what's on your docket. Like what all tasks do you need to do to get a deal from I found it to I've closed it? And how much of that do you love? And how much of that do you find soul crushing and you would rather find anything else to do? So let's take the soul crushing things off your plate and let's create a job description so someone else can do that. So there's another book called Who Not How that talks about you can't possibly be an expert in everything. So you don't have to figure out how to run your social media platform or how to do your transaction management. You have to figure out who's good at that and how to pull them onto your team, whether that's part-time, full-time, virtual. So we help people kind of manage their workload by either outsourcing some of their work to someone else, or restructuring who they have on their team. So that's about a third of the work we do. And about a third of the work we do is helping people, okay, what can I do to sharpen my edge? What can I do to kind of differentiate myself? And that's some of the things that we've done with RealNex is, I will say when I came on board with Blaine 5 years ago, he said there's because my background is in sales coaching across different industries, and for the last 5 years, it's been focused on commercial real estate. And when I came on board, Blade said, "Well, there's a lot of commercial real estate brokers that they don't use a CRM at all." Which I could not wrap my head around. Like, how am I tracking 100 conversations about different properties with different people, who I'm going to follow up with next? This person I've been working on for a while. Commercial real estate has a long sales cycle. So I might have to talk to someone for 3 years before they're ready to list their property. How am I tracking that? But in fact, that is true that a number of brokers don't use a CRM. If so, please call me. We can we can help you. So if you think about a bell curve, so kind of the fat part of the curve, the tail that doesn't use
Dave's got
use
it.
a
Sorry.
that doesn't use a commercial a CRM at all to track their activity. And there's the fat part of the curve. They're like, this is one of my tools. Maybe I've got a CCIM financial calculator that I use. Maybe, I've got my cell phone, I've got my laptop, I've got a CRM. So I've got my tools and I'm using my tools. So that's kind of the fat part of the curve. I will tell you, some of the brokers that we coach, I consider kind of the Olympic athletes of commercial real estate, the consistent 6 and 7 figure to themselves And those people don't use their CRM like a tool, they use it like a weapon. And they are incredibly proficient in how they strategically set up their CRM so that I'll give you an example. We've got a multifamily broker, and he looks at his conversations every, he's his prospecting strategy is not, hi, the market is hot. Do you want to sell? It is, I see you own this property. Are you interested in picking up more in your portfolio? And when he says that, and if they say yes, he says, fantastic. I don't want to send you stuff you're not interested in. Help me understand what your buy box is so that I can refine what I'm sending you. So I only send you things that are relevant for you. And he captures all that information, the number of doors, the average price per door, the age of the building. Is it is it student? Is it affordable? Is it conventional? Are there certain geographies you like, certain geographies you don't like? He captures all of that in his CRM. So when he gets somebody who says, okay, we've been talking for a while, I'm ready to list my building. Fantastic. All right, let's get the paperwork going. Let's get the property squared away. Here's when we'll set up the drone photography. While he's queuing all that up to get it ready to come to market, he's already on the phone because he's already sorted his list of, if this property that looks like this would be relevant for these 19 buyers who are in my market who like that type of thing. He's on the phone to them saying, I'm getting ready to list a property. I want to put this on your radar screen so you know it's coming. So when that property hits the market and this other broker calls them and says, hey, this property just hit the market, they say, I've already talked to somebody about that. It's already on my radar screen. I'm already getting ready to put a bid together, which is why in the last 5 years, he's double-ended almost every single one of his deals. But he strategically thinks about his CRM that way. How do I capture information? What would be relevant for me to think about? How do I approach this market? Which means, one, he has a defined market. Two, he knows who his buyers in his market because he's groomed his market and had conversations. And how do I think strategically? The beautiful thing about that is once you've created what I call the chalk outline of your field, that's all you need to focus on. You don't need to chase everything. You have your defined market and you groom that over and over and over again. If you have conversations, once a quarter for 5 years with somebody who says, I never sell, I never sell, I never sell, which we all know means I never sell until I have a life crisis, until I got a diagnosis or a divorce or a death or something that says that never sell now comes on the market. Well, I've talked to this person for 4 times a year. I've had 20 touch points with that person. What's the likelihood that they're going to raise their hand and say, okay, yes, I'm ready to sell. Let's have a conversation. So those are the kinds of things we kind of think about, and help you think about, okay, so how does that apply to your market? What tools do you already have? Your list of people you ever done business with, the people you almost did business with but didn't, anyone who's ever put a bid in that you didn't close. Like, are you capturing those people? Do you have a regular cadence of touch points with those people? What are you saying on the first call? What are you saying on the 10th call? Like, let's put a strategy together so that you don't have to exert so much mental effort when you sit down and say, what am I going to do today? If you have a plan, then you're like, I know exactly what I'm going to do today because I have a plan and I'm following it. So,
Melody, I just want to say you bring me back to the Marcus days, but I didn't have a plan. I just did it through brute force, just kept on
absolutely.
doing it. But you know what I love that you said, consistency, the mentorship, the plan, and with now the tech tools, right? Like RealNext and other things.
Yep.
So in this change, because you've been coaching training with your partner for so long,
Yep.
how has the changes stayed the same, but also changed with all the things, let's say, through the last 10 years? And we know it was a very interesting last 10 years.
Yes. Yeah. Well, whenever we tell people, first you want to define your market, we always tell them go back for the last 5 years, because in the last 5 years, I don't know if we've had a typical commercial real estate year. COVID made things crazy, and work from home made things crazy, and people relocating across the country made things crazy. So, here's what hasn't changed and will never change. So I have taught some marketing classes to MBAs, and we talk about B2B or B2C, which is business to consumer, business to business. But I always say it doesn't matter what you're doing. You're always P2P. You're always person to person. And people don't change. People want someone that they makes them feel safe. People want someone that they feel like, oh, they are looking out for my best interest. They have an expertise. I can rely on them. I can trust them. So no matter what kind of AI tools or technology, it is um, it is always how do you make, I mean, it's back to your Dale Carnegie, how to win friends and influence people. How do you make people feel safe? So that will never change, especially in times where, okay, interest rates, deals don't pencil the same way they used to, and sellers still think the market is hot and they can sell what they, when the market was at its peak, and buyers are like, no, the market has changed. I want to be here. Like, how do I bridge that gap? You only bridge that gap by helping people see what the reality is in a way that they can digest it. So that will never change, is how do you relate to people in a way that makes them feel seen, heard, and understood. And that's your job as the broker, is to make sure that their concerns are addressed. What has changed is some of the tools you have to do that. So, AI tools will let you be more visible on social media, will let you follow up, help you write maybe your marketing copy, maybe will help you write emails. You can use AI tools to clone your voice. I'm not an advocate of that, and we can talk more about, again, the more AI is a tool which I use every day. I also think people value authenticity, and I think it will make interpersonal interactions much more compelling than chatting with a bot is. I want to talk to a human. So, but the market is this is commercial real estate is a cyclical market. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down, sometimes it's shrinking, sometimes it's growing. So we have an entire course in our One More Deal library called The Four Mistakes. And if anyone is interested, I'd be happy to share that course with you. I'll put my contact info in the chat. Um, but if the market is up or if the market's down, all of those four different directions of the market have a commercial real estate strategy specific to that. And so you just have to understand that you have to shape your conversations so that's relevant for the person on the other side of the desk. So
Melody,
James, I don't know if that answered your question or
one of the things that I hear way too often as I talk to people, and I'm sure you do as well, is that they lease one day, sell the next, find a tenant rep opportunity and run with it, might do a 2,000 square feet industrial building and a 1,000 foot retail space. And and they're doing okay.
right,
And the problem is they're doing okay.
right.
And if you want to do okay, do that. But if you want to reach top performance,
Yes.
I advocate specialization,
Yep.
focus graphically and by product.
Right.
I know that the person that you were talking about earlier, multifamily, where you see Bob Knackel, I sell development land. These
Right.
people, that they are known for something, and
Right.
they get all the business because they're known for that, and they're the
Right.
market authority. So
Right.
we talk about the box that you've talked about. What's sort of right sizing to know that if I just do this and become the master of that, it's a big enough market for me to to realize the type of potential. I think that's where you generally start. So
Yeah,
understanding what the
al-
how do you really
always.
focus and win?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and we do always start there. And let me just say, there is not one right way to do commercial real estate. So I talk to a number of people who are like, I'm a generalist, I want to stay a generalist, and you absolutely can do that. I always say, tell me what you want your life to look like, and let's fit your work into that. So some people say, I don't want to travel. I don't, I want this, this is good enough. If you want to stay a generalist, you can. That's not what we advocate. We always start with, um, you want to be known for something. You can't there's so many nuances to some of these types of properties. We coach someone that all they do is refrigerated self-storage, super, super specialized. Now, he covers 6 states, but if you want refrigerated self-storage, he's your guy because he knows all the properties. So you want to figure out, how do I define my market? And that is 2 things. It is geography and it is asset class. And the first exercise we put people through is we say, okay, define your market for me. And, people will say, well, my market is, I kind of cover this. Well, what does your market look like? Oh, it's good. Good is not helpful. Good is not quantifiable. So we put people through an exercise where we work backwards. What is your income goal? How much money do you want to make? And let's see if your territory supports that level of income. So we work backwards from there. Give me the average number of transactions that have happened in the last 5 years. Give me your churn rate. How much inventory is in that. Anyway, so when we say, tell me about your market, we want a number. This is the average number of sales. This is the churn rate. This is for me to get to this income goal, I would need to get this market share. If you do that calculation and you say, well, for me to get to my income goal, I'm going to need a 40% market share. I got news for you. That's not happening. So when we put people through this exercise, let me emphasize this, more than half. Let me say that again. When we put people through this exercise and make them do the calculation and come out with a number, more than half come back and say, my territory is not sized correctly. It's either too small. So even if you do everything right, you will not get to your income goals, or it's too big, which means I can't possibly manage all this inventory. So the question I always ask people is, if you're working in a territory and it's not sized correctly, you've either made it too small or too large, when would you want to know that? It seems to me I would want to know that sooner rather than later.
Melody, I love this. Yeah, when I was at Marcus, 1,000 to 2,000 is our database. We're lucky to get a 10% market share over time, right? Having the mentor, we did the deal. I did no deal, but my mentor did all the deals, but we did the deal. Well, and kind of an advanced topic. Well, while you, let's say, do all of this, what's your thought and training on playing nice in the sandbox, right? Because if you only represent a certain amount of market share, how do you leverage and play nice with all the other experts in your market?
That's a great question. And a lot of it has to do with mindset. If you have a scarcity mindset versus an abundance mindset, a lot of our top performers are at a 10% market share, 7 to 12% market share. So you don't need every customer in the market. You don't. You just need the ones uh, that are going to engage with you, that are willing to take your calls and be open to your guidance and be willing to share what their goals are. So if there's other brokers in the market that are a better fit for them, then that's where they should be. There's enough business for people who are committed to excellence. So you don't have to capture everyone. And the reality is every single one of your customers is on somebody else's prospect list. So, the other brokers in your territory are not the enemy. You're much better off having good relationships because frequently, if you're representing the buyer and they're representing the seller, you guys have to have good communication. So I definitely am an advocate for an abundance mentality of, hey, if I've been calling on this guy and if he ends up going with you, I might still have an opportunity to be part of that deal with that person on the other side. So let's make sure that, um, I always think playing nice in the sandbox is just good karma.
Yeah, so this is what I love from the start to the finish. And can you kind of tell people, let's say those that are in the beginning, what's their roadmap look like, the middle term, and let's say the ending? Because a lot of our friends, unfortunately, right, they're 50s, 60s, terming out. Can you tell the life cycle of the commercial broker, kind of in an average ideal way of what you see the
Yep.
path?
Yep. So I'm happy to speak to that, and I'll talk a little bit about kind of where we come alongside different points. So it is not uncommon to start as a newbie, to say on day one, I'm really going to focus on industrial when I've never done an industrial, I've never walked an industrial property. So it is not uncommon to start as a generalist. And I think the first couple years, that's a good plan, because if you think I'm going to focus on this type of property, is this the type of property I want to immerse myself in and become an expert and think about, every waking moment. Let me think about what is happening in retail. Let me think about what's happening in industrial. So I think it's a good idea to kind of get exposure to a number of different things. But at some point, we definitely recommend commit to, where your area of genius is going to be, what's your going to be your area of expertise. And that's how you're going to show up in the market. So that's the first few years, is just kind of wandering in the wilderness until you find your path. So once you find your path, then what we talk about so the book that Blaine wrote, Thrive, we talk about this in chapter 1. It is, okay, define your market. So you've got your chalk outline. This is the geography. These are the asset class. And what I'm looking for, all I'm looking for, is 125 people I'm going to target. So when we talk to people about that, we say, here's your criteria. They control the type of asset you'd like to trade. They're likely to do a deal in the next 5 years, and they're willing to engage with you. So if you find 125 of those people and you groom them on a regular basis, I'm touching with points with them on a regular basis, good things will happen, because you develop a relationship, and when they're ready, the idea that I'm going to call someone and they're like, I'm not planning on selling my building, and I'm going to say some magic words that they say, oh, well, now I am, unlikely. So let's meet them where they are. So, when we talk to people and we coach them on, your goal is to develop a target list of 125 people that are going to be your main focus. So, if you've got 2,000 people in your territory, I don't expect you to talk to 2,000 people once a quarter, but 125 people once a quarter, totally doable. So when we're working people through that idea, they will say things to us like, okay, well, I went home and I did my homework and I put that list together and I've got 27 people. Fantastic. So it might take you 6 months, 8 months, 9 months to get to 50 or 60. Typically, what we see as we're coaching people is they might say something like, well, it's been 11 months and I've got 90 people and I'm having trouble getting the last, 35 people on my list, because now that I've been talking to these people on a regular basis, I'm so busy that I'm having trouble getting this last 100, the last 125. Sorry. Um, so that's kind of early stages, is really kind of honing who you're focused on, honing how you're going to talk to them. And then once you kind of get that dialed in, then ideally you'll start having business and then repeat business, so that you'll kind of have that flywheel going, staying consistent about staying in touch. So we talk about the 125 as your A list. You've got a B list and a C list, how you kind of define people who are in your territory. So, that's a never ending process. B's move to A's move to B's. So we kind of put that together. And then, once you have that success, at some point you might say, this is fantastic, but, God, these smaller properties that take as much work as the bigger properties, I'd like to hand that off to someone else. So like, I'd like to bring somebody on, or, I can do the smaller properties if I can hand off, managing all of the quotes that come in, or managing who's doing, have someone else do the tours for me. So the second kind of mid part is, how do I have this program? How do I have these systems where I can plug people into the things that I don't have time to do or I don't like to do? So, how do I put a team together around me to support my success? So that's kind of the middle part. And then frequently in that middle part, it is, I love brokerage, but I've done this deal with this guy, and I made, X number of $1,000s when he bought the building. And then I made X number of $1,000s when he sold the building 5 years later. So I know how much I made, but I watched how much he made, which was orders of magnitude to what I made. I want to go from where I am to where he is. I want to figure out how I go from brokerage to ownership. So, many people get into commercial real estate because they want to have a portfolio of their own. The challenge is you're like, okay, I'm dealing in these $6 million buildings, $10 million buildings, $15 million buildings. Hold on, what can I afford? Maybe a duplex. So we put together a course called Broker to Buyer, where we talk about how do I go from being the broker to moving into a principal place. How do I put together a syndication? How do I become, the person who puts the deal together, invests funds? So we help people who want to have, at some point, I want to move from brokerage income to ownership income. So that's something that we kind of help people think about. And then kind of once they have put their team together, they've figured out, kind of how this all works, then it's fine tuning. So what else can we do to accelerate? What else, or, what can I do? So I'm bringing on junior brokers so that I can, harvest the relationships I have, but I might not be, an integral part of the deal. So how do I structure succession planning so that I can harvest all of my relationships, but hand it off to a team so I can continue generating the revenue I want to generate. But, maybe I'm traveling, maybe I'm hanging out with my grandkids, maybe I'm golfing, maybe I'm touring the properties that I've figured out how to own and to make sure things are running smoothly. So, there is kind of a different set of problems depending on where you are in your career.
You call them problems, but they're really opportunities. And you
Mhm.
said a lot in the last couple of minutes, and just to maybe think about where I started with this generalist versus specialist, a lot of times uh, the agent wants to do the job because it's a friend or relationship or someone that they want to do the business for. But if it's not in your specialty, that's where you bring in your teammate. It's like
Mhm.
I can definitely help you with that, but Jim's really the refrigerator warehouse person, or
Right,
Mel, my downtown retail partner. So let me
right,
work with Melody on that one. So I'll
right.
stay involved. I'll provide the support, comfort, and what you talked about earlier, trust and confidence. So I'm not just, passing it on. I'm managing it. I'm staying involved and leveraging that relationship, bringing value and supporting my team.
Yep,
But the other part is
absolutely.
moving from being a deal maker to building a business.
Hmm.
And what you talked about is, if you cultivate what looks like work in the beginning, when you start to, like, if I'm sitting in front of my computer and I've got nothing, and I need to profile 1,000 properties and a
Right,
thousand people, and getting to know those buying criteria and getting to know the broken systems in a building or the roof
right.
problem, or whatever
Hmm.
the hidden challenges or opportunities are, over time, that becomes an invaluable asset that no one else in the market has. So everyone has sort of a commodity level of information. By
Hmm.
bringing your information on top of CoStar, Reonomy, or any other Real Nexus data we provide, any of that is what gives you special sauce. And at the end of your career or the middle of your career, that becomes a machine that just cranks out business, and then
Hmm.
it's an asset. So you're building an asset that is transferable, and a team that you bring behind you can start to mine for the rest of their career. So
Yeah.
really exciting to hear
Yeah.
you.
And Melly, I just want to add, you know what? All these things, putting in systems, using the CRM, since I started with ACT and then the company that you bought, REA. But see, that's transferable with the book of business,
Absolutely.
right, Melly? So maybe you could add it before we open it up,
Hmm.
and I love this because you don't have to lose it, right? Like they always say brokers go broke, right? You're on a hamster wheel, but in commercial, it's a little different from residential if they plan right and understand
Yes.
the end goal. So maybe you can kind of end and close with that before we open it up for questions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I would say when we're coaching, we always talk about you want your business to be repeatable and portable. In other words, you want to build your relationship so that you are doing transactions, with the same people over and over again, that they come back to you because you've done a fantastic job. But we also want to be portable so that, those relationships are with you, not with your platform. They are with you. So if you move, those relationships go with you. So that is absolutely, and you have that lens of, this is what I'm building. And Jeff, to your point, you are spot on. It is, if CoStar is your only data source, how can you be better than every other broker that only uses CoStar? So if you're focused on an area, every conversation you have is giving or getting information about lease rates, rental rates, vacancy rates, roof height, number of power sources, whatever's relevant for that audience is what you want to trade in. And this is the non-sexy part of the reality of what it takes to go from good to amazing is the gathering of information, understanding how to leverage it. And is it sexy to say, well, tell me a little bit about, the roof height or the number of docking bays you have, or how far you are from the shipping, you know, um, hubs. But if that's relevant to your audience and you capture it, then you can speak to that. But that is certainly not the sexiest part of what it takes. But is it sexy for Michael Jordan to practice his three throws and run wind sprints? Like that's not the sexy part, but that's the part that allows you to do the sexy parts.
Yeah. Well said. Any questions from the audience? So I'll tell you, the wealth of knowledge is not just new training. It goes to super advanced. So I know we have different levels and a lot of advanced practitioners and also instructors. Any questions? There got to be some questions. I know with Max or David Monroe or Eric or Nelson. Come on, Katie. I see you guys there.
Not a question, but Melody, I just had to smile when you said 5 years. And I didn't realize until yesterday how many years it's been because I have to renew my CRE credits in Georgia. And at the same time, I'll be closing a really nice transaction here next month. In fact, Jim, I just got the big earnest money yesterday. It went hard, non-refundables. It was a big stack. And so that's always a good step, right? And I was
Congrats.
talking to my wife just this morning. She said, honey, when did you look at that piece of property the first time? I said, oh my gosh, it was spring of 20. Here we are, 5 years. And through that, probably more often than once a quarter, because I'm that guy. Not every week, but I'm going to be in touch more than once a quarter. But there's something to say about perseverance and persistence. Um, and so I applaud you for saying that, Jim. I'm just sitting here listening to another piece that you're putting together for all 16 of us here in this room and participating. It pays dividends. So I just want to commend you on what you're doing. Continue it. I've already hooked you up on LinkedIn, so we'll connect and talk. Yeah.
Yeah, it is definitely the long game in commercial real estate, long sales cycle. I mean, we've got a broker in San Diego, who does multifamily, super low churn rate. San Diego, when the market is terrible, their rental increases are flat. They've got rent control. There's very little inventory. People buy and they never sell. So a very low churn rate. But he's had people that have called him, and he's kind of old school, a big believer in postcards. He sends postcards out twice a year, and he puts a code on each of them so he can kind of track to see which ones are. He had somebody call him. They said, I got your postcard, and he says, well, what's the code on there? It was about that postcard was from 6 years ago. It landed on their desk. This is the one thing about physical mail versus email. Does a lot of it end up in the recycling? 100%. But, all you need is one. So they had stuck it in a file. And then, when some things had happened, they pulled it out and he was their guy. And that was from a postcard 6 years ago. So sometimes you don't know we talk about this field, like what you're planting, what you're watering, you're waiting for the time for it to harvest, and it doesn't all come at the same time. So sometimes and that's one of the things we talk about as a coach is keep the faith. I made 400 phone calls and I've only gotten 6 meetings. Okay, well, but if one of those meetings turns into, a deal that is lucrative, then that's just the recipe for what you need to do to get there.
It just increases the odds that the next one is the hit.
Exactly. Exactly.
No, I just like to add on the postcard, doing things different, doing things consistent. What my partner, Rich Enderlin, he said he never got a deal out of this client, but his grandfather saved the postcard in a file. And when they became executors, they looked through the file. They saw these consistent postcards that he saved on the property. They called Rich.
Right.
That one deal. You just never know, even though they never want to do it. You never know what they do with that one piece of postcard.
Yep. Exactly.
David Monroe.
Hands up.
Great job, Melody, and thank you for the info. I just wanted to add one of the things that I did when I started cold calling, and I learned this from that other coaching program that's out there, names not to be mentioned. And I know Blaine. I'm a CCIM instructor, so I know Blaine and Bo. I know Bo is part of that group as well.
Yep.
As a multifamily guy, how I know Bo. Anyway, one thing I did was I identified how much money I made per call based off of my average deal volume for a year. Now you need a year's worth at least of transactions before you can do this, but if you've got that, you can divide how many calls you're making by the amount you make and say, okay, well, I make, $35 per call because of all this. And then when you get told no because you hate cold calling, you can say, oh, just made $23, hang up and
right.
call the next number. So it's
I love that.
a mind shift thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And by the way, I've coached salespeople in multiple industries, and anyone who says, man, I love cold calling. I cannot wait to get to the office and dial people that don't know me, that I have a possibility that they're going to hang up on me or curse me out. Anyone who says they love it is a liar. So you do not have to love it, but you do have to do it. So, and one of the things we do, because we know it is, and there's a lot of psychology, is, how you can kind of get past that call reluctance is what, I like to call it, is what can I do to make this more fun? So if you have an accountability partner, all right, let's score, if I leave a voicemail, it's 1 point. If I talk to them, it's, 2 points. If I get a meeting, it's 3 points. If they meet in person. So what can I do to gamify it? And then have a contest in the office. Like, well, who got the most points? Whoever the winner is gets, whoever the loser is, they have to buy lunch. So, or I always tell people, okay, your goal for today is to get 20 no's consecutive. You have to get 20 consecutive no's. The second somebody says yes to you, you have to start again. And it's actually hard to get 20 no's in a row. So what can I do to shift my mindset? So I'm like, oh, they told me no. Fantastic. I'm at 15. Ah, damn, they told me yes. They're going to meet with me. I got to start again. So
Melody, I love all these things. This is the fun stories, but consistency with brokers and agents that have been in the industry for a long time. It's consistent stories. It's this consistent experience. So a lot of people forget that. But Melody, I did find that one crazy person. I won't name the name, but love to cold call. He's wacky, but you know what? He was an interesting character, right, that we met. And because he really loved it, he got to make 6 million, 5 million consistently. Later on, he got out of cold calling to be a syndicator because he just did it so much. But you're right. No one really likes it, but you just got to do it.
Right.
One
Absolutely.
thing, Jim, Melody, you talked about the accountability coach, and I think you said so. You talked about the free throws with Michael Jordan. Everyone, if you ask anybody on this call, if anyone was at ICSC, anybody we saw at SIR, like, I'm busy, I'm so busy. Everybody's so busy, but they're not doing the free throws. They're not. So by having a coach, when I show up on Friday for my coaching call, how many free throws did you shoot? How many did you make? How many cold calls did you make? How many connections did you make? How many meetings did you have? How many pitches did you make? How many deals did you get? You have to have some, you can do it yourself. That's great. But when I go to the gym, if I have a trainer on top of me, I'm pushing a little bit harder than if I'm there by myself. If you've got a stopwatch timing your sprint, you go a little bit faster when you need to. Yeah. And it's just nature. You need that pressure that comes from an external source, someone watching it, because otherwise you're watching yourself, and that's really hard to do.
Yeah,
Hard to
no,
mitigate.
absolutely. Well, I mean, as humans, we're all wired. I like to do the things that feel good, and I don't like to do the things that don't feel good. So if I don't love cold calling, I'll find all kinds of other things that I can do. So I'm busy and I'm productive that, oh, I didn't have time. Nobody calls and complains like I was on your cold call list and you didn't call me out of the blue. So what's going on? Like there's no negative consequences today for not making those calls. It's the same way, why it's challenging to kind of manage your weight because, I want to lose 5 pounds, over time, but the donut is in front of me right now. So you have your today self and your tomorrow self have to work something out. And we have people that say, all I want is a 15-minute call once a week. Okay, we can set that up. Here's what the call consists of. This is my plan for next week. I have to submit to you, this is a list of people I'm going to call. And then my call next week is, this is a number I got to. Just knowing there's another human that's going to say, well, why did you only get to half? What were you doing? And how can we change that for next week? What's getting in the way? How can we think about, working through more of that list? Just knowing you have to have that conversation with another human because we're all very good at letting ourselves off the hook. Oh, I thought I was going to do this and I didn't quite get to it. Oh, no big deal. I'll do it tomorrow. Well, tomorrow frequently means never.
Can I add something to that conversation between you and Jeff, Melody?
Please.
I don't know everybody here on the call. Some I've seen many, many times. Some I know, some I've had lunch with, but there's a few here that I don't know. So I'll say this to the group. There's also a sense of accountability to those who organize what's here in front of us. I don't get to see, I haven't seen Jim. The last time I saw you, Jim, well, gosh, I can't even remember when the last time it was I saw you. And when I miss a call that he has on a weekly basis, normally because I'm doing a deal, working on a deal, or I'm talking to somebody else about what we're doing. So, and Jim knows that because he knows my activity. But here collectively, you have a room full of people that you can also be accountable to just by showing up because they're putting these opportunities together for us. And so to those who might be new to EXP, whether you're in residential, commercial, or you're in another field, and not another field, but with another group, and you're just taking a look or you're participating somehow, some way with this group, there's also accountability here by being present, by showing up and hearing what somebody else knows from experience that I need to hear. I needed a product that Jeff has. It just took me a while to get my desk to where it's at, so where I can start implementing that, right? You have to do things in steps. And so now I'm talking to Jeff's team, and Jeff doesn't even know that, but I'm talking to his team. And so I'm going to build it again yet. But that was provided by these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And you get it by consistently showing up. And you make a connection now, and you connect on LinkedIn. And so the accountability is also within our atmosphere. I guess that's what I'm trying to say, and I'm being long-winded. But I
No,
love it, and I'm thankful for it.
Eric, and let me build on that because I think you make an excellent point. So, first of all, if you wanted to work with One More Deal, we don't do coaching where we're going to coach you for the rest of your career. We do it in 6-hour increments. Let's, work on something specific for 6 hours. Our goal is not to talk to you, forever. Our goal is to let's put a system in place so that you can do it on your own. And so, Jeff, you talked about if I'm going to the gym and I'm working with a trainer and I know they're going to kick my ass, like I'm going to push myself harder. Absolutely. However, maybe I can't afford a trainer, but maybe I have a neighbor that also wants to get fit. So, Eric, to your point, you don't necessarily need to talk to me every week for 15 minutes. You can find an accountability buddy, in your group. Like, hey, I want to make sure I'm more consistent. Maybe we both have the same goal. All right, we want to, we haven't been as prospecting as diligently as we want to. When the market's down, this is the time to make sure when people are nervous, they like give me reassurance. Is the market going to come back? When? What, all right, well, is my crystal ball better than yours? Maybe, I don't know, but let's talk about it. So let me have an accountability partner. Like all right, we're going to send each other our list, and maybe you don't want to put your names on it. Maybe you just want to, whatever you want to do so that you have someone else that will help you stay accountable. I tell people set up, a prospecting gamification in your office, the points of, I made calls and here's what's happened, because whatever you're tracking and measuring with somebody else is going to get more attention. So I love that idea of this community can be your accountability partners.
Melly, and we're just learning. And Eric, thank you. And it was in Raleigh that we met in person with Daniel. So we met in Raleigh for that, and you drove all the way up.
How's the law? I was thinking maybe it was. It's like, oh my gosh, are you going to go to Barcelona?
No, I have other things, but
Are you going
going
to Boston?
maybe.
Okay,
I'm
maybe I'll
planning
see
to
you in
travel.
Boston.
Yeah. But Melly, going on that and with what Eric said, right now that we have virtual to use social media like LinkedIn and these communities to share, and it doesn't take time, like you say, traveling to Boston, traveling to here, traveling to there. That's expensive, takes time. Showing up, connecting with new people on these calls, find one new person you can network with through LinkedIn. I mean, now, like I said, with social media, maybe just closing up with that, this technology, this social media aspect, this is new to commercial. We were there. We don't put faces on cards. We don't put ourselves out there. We're stealth and secret. So Melody, maybe you can cover that. Remember those days.
Yeah, I mean, this is here's one thing to think about. If everybody does it this way, then I want to do it a different way. How can I stand out? How can I look different? How can I differentiate myself? So, there is not one right way to do anything, especially in commercial real estate where it is the Wild West and everyone's making stuff up as they go along. So, I think do what's authentic to you and your tribe will find you.
And Jeff, while you thank you, Melody, for that. And Jeff, because you're in tech, maybe you could close out too and share a little more. So it's lucky to have both of you sharing your knowledge, experience, and I just want to thank you. But Jeff, if you don't mind sharing on the technology part.
Jeff, you're muted.
Just try to tie together some of the things that were talked about in the technology sense, and it's part of what we do with our boot camp. So for those of you who are RealNext clients, we will be scheduling another boot camp with Melody, but Melody's services are available without RealNext tied into it. And if you're, we'd love to have you with RealNext, of course, but it's all how you do business. But what we've applied is this idea of sort of mapping the market, understanding who the 1,000 are. And I think that is right. Jim mentioned it. And I think, most research has seen, depending on your market, that's about the size that you can manage in your head and in your sequence and in your cadence. But getting those properties cataloged, understanding what they are, where they are, the foundation of information, the incremental information that you build, and you build it over time. Every time you talk to somebody, add some more information about it. Every time you talk to someone, give them some information about what you found out from other places that they don't know. So you're always adding value to those conversations. Cultivate people in a cadence and have a system to know that it's not just I'm saying every quarter, but it's on your calendar on May or June 1st coming up. Here are the 10 calls that I need to make. Here's who they are and what they do. And over time, that begins to get populated because what I do today and when I talk to Jim today, I know I've got to follow up with him on July 15th. And July 15th, I'm going to forget it if I don't put it out there and pin it and know that on July 15th I need to do something. So many times the knowledge that you have today is gone tomorrow and it's money in the bank. Any one of you that's not putting lease expirations in a system, you're losing money because you're going to kick yourself when someone said that I just renewed that lease. Where were you yesterday? And you may miss it by a minute, but if you're not in front of these lease renewals 18 months ahead of time, it's not 6 months ahead of time. It's if I sign a lease today, every anniversary, there should be a tickler in there. Hey, Jim, how's that space working out for Melody? How's your business growing? Are you guys growing? Business good? Space still working for you? Oh, by the way, market's going up, it's going down. Let's get ahead of the renewal. Remember, you have an option on that space to expand if you needed to. Whatever it is, just have a sequence that you're always ahead of it. And too often, again, I'm chasing the new deal rather than mining my existing relationships and opportunities. So there's so much gold and opportunity in your relationships and what you've done, but that gets built over time by organizing it, cataloging it, and just making sure that you put it into practice. So uh, I think that there's so many new things coming out, but those are fundamentals. I mean, we're not. You can talk about AI. You can talk about. We've got virtual reality, which is great, which I think all of you should be thinking about. We do. A great service that helps you map your market. And I used to go into boardrooms across the country and around the world, and everyone take me into their conference room. It's like, here is our city, and it's every year, every 5 years we get a new map, and like, here's the city, here's what it looked like in 2000, here's 2010, here's 2020, and it's pretty static and stagnant. Well, what if you could do that in a video? And you can sort of digitize your market to know if I am the uh, multifamily guy, or I am the refrigerated warehouse person, or I am whatever, or I am Tampa. If this is my market, how do I present that and show that in the most effective way? Because you think that everybody might know as much as you do, or they don't know your market. If you really are good at it, they don't know your market like you do. So if you can present that and showcase what are the economic drivers of my community? Why do you want to be here? Where is the new road coming in? Where's the new transit hub coming in? Where is the new stadium being built? Why is this area growing and this one not? And why do you want to invest here, not there? Putting that together in a video that personalizes to you, it can build your credibility. And then you take that same information and say, oh, now I have a listing here. So you put your listing on and you can showcase that and talk about the attributes of that listing. While everyone else is sending out an email with or a postcard, that might stand out. But if you're using a video that you can use in social media or in a link on your website, or if the building doesn't exist or it's dilapidated, you've got a lot of products that's hard to sell because it just doesn't show well. Virtualize it, make it look beautiful, sell it in its future state, and we can help you do that for you. So there's a lot of things that are at our fingertips and ways to differentiate that aren't always thought of or taken advantage of. So from a postcard to virtual reality, from a piece of paper to a database that's telling you what to do, reminding you what to do to help you prioritize, are all sort of the transformations of the opportunity that we have that we can take advantage of. So I really appreciate the opportunity, Jim, to be with you and Melody for sharing and the collaboration that we've had over time, and look forward to working with others on the group as we continue to expand our relationship with One More Deal.
Melody, Jeff, thank you so much. Please, everyone in audience that are watching but not on, but we always love for people to sign on. As you can see, interactive, and to get the wealth of knowledge to talk in person is amazing. So join us every Wednesday, Top Agent Nation. More curriculum, more things are happening. I know behind the scenes, Alejandra, got to give you a shout out. You always work so hard with the team, and we're putting more and more together. So everyone have a great day, great week, and see everyone next Wednesday. Thank you so much, everyone.
Great meeting. Thanks.